going to push the record button for this webinar. I appreciate everyone's chance today to chat a bit. Some of you I've met, some of you I've not met. My name is Mike Steckline. I'm with the Institute for Enterprise Excellence. And this is going to be an open mic sort of a webinar where we're encouraging dialogue and conversation about some ideas that I put together with some colleagues and friends. And we got a bit of an agenda here to work from. So Brian Lassiter is going to do some introductions and explain some of the background. I'm going to talk a bit about what I shared at a PEN breakfast in February. Jim Nelson is going to talk about some of the ideas that we've had as far as a follow-up workshop. What we would like to do is get input from you folks on the phone, and the webinar is being recorded, so you can share the link with others that would like to learn more about this, and we'll also get input from others from two aspects. Current struggles people are working through, and some of the things we try to address in our course that we teach, but just to get in a better understanding of the voice of the customer. And also, if this idea of a follow-up workshop has merit, what sort of things are people looking for as far as a workshop? What are they interested in? Then I'll capture what our next steps are. And I've just got a final slide that if people are curious to learn a little bit more about the Institute for Enterprise Excellence, where I work, I've included that as a final slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian. He's going to give us some background information, and welcome.
Thanks, Mike, and thank you all for dialing in. I'll keep my comments brief so we can get to the meat of the discussion and get you all involved in exploring it. I'm Brian Lassiter. I'm with the Performance Excellence Network, and Mike gave a little bit of the context. I've known Mike for, gosh, 12, 15 years, I think, Mike, and you've got a deep background in continuous improvement and all sorts of experiences that I think are useful for our members or that are trying to improve performance. And as Mike mentioned, he gave one of our monthly breakfast talks. Gosh, it was probably 3 months ago now. I think it was the February discussion. Some of you might recognize the title, "Where Tools Lead, Fools Follow," and it's a catchy phrase, and I think it's completely accurate. I think, and we probably all have experienced this, many organizations start with the tools. That's the easiest part to train and can produce some immediate benefit, but to make change stick and to certainly, improve and sustain outcomes, you need more than just the tools. You need cultural change and hardwiring the methods and so forth in the organization. So anyway, the discussion in February went very well. I know many on the line were in that conversation. And if you weren't in that conversation, we do have a recording of it by video. You can check it out later. But Mike and Jim Nelson, who you hear from here in a second, and I said, well, maybe there's a need to go a little deeper, more than just an hour primer on this conversation, maybe a half day or a full day dialogue and a more active, interactive workshop, if you will, to go a little deeper into the concepts might make sense, offer some value to PEN members, ASQ members who partners heavily with PEN, and just the community in general. So that's a little bit of the context. I see there's about 20 people on the call. We won't do introductions, but I'll invite, when we get to discussion, do say your name and who you're with, at least the first time that we hear your voice, so we get a sense of who's on the call. I appreciate everybody dialing in. We'll keep this brief and crisp, but the goal today really is to introduce or reintroduce the concept, talk about what it might look like to go a little deeper, have a conversation about what your needs are and what might be useful, and just see where this goes. We don't have a lot of expectations other than making this useful for you all. So that's the context. I think, Mike, if you want to talk a little bit about February, we'll start rolling.
I'll do that. Thanks, Brian, for those comments. So at the meeting in February, I covered a couple topics. I gave a brief high-level overview of some of the comparison between the Baldrige framework, the Shingo model, and the information we've been building onto the Shingo model. And that was sort of the opening comments. I know that a lot of the people were familiar with the Shingo model or the Baldrige framework and use it. less familiar with the Shingo model, so I explained that briefly and then talked a bit about how we've been continuing to develop it. We discussed mental models, some of the differences between working memory and hardware memory. And the reason that was important is as you are trying to explain some of these fundamental different ways of looking at things, you're challenging some of the mental models that people have and understanding how it matches or doesn't match. And that can be pretty heavy lifting. And if you try to compress it within a 1 hour conversation, it can be a lot. And we tried to give enough information to provide people information, but it can be overwhelming. And it's something that requires more discussion and dialogue and a little more time to kind of understand where it may fit with what people's experiences are. The essence of the presentation was primarily around some of the phases in transformation journeys and the patterns that we've observed in organizations over time, including some of the common barriers and pain points that people experience, including the initial focus on tools and what often happens when people don't get beyond the tool phase. I gave a high-level expectation or explanation rather of two of the models or frameworks that we talk about. We talk about one called a sustainability model, and another one is a velocity model, being the velocity of the transformation effort. And then we asked a question, if people are interested in learning more, what are the options? And we listed a couple of them out, and the breakfast meeting was over. But we did have some follow-up conversation from some folks. They expressed interest. And Jim and Brian and I in particular had some conversations about that. And I'm going to turn it over to Jim shortly and have him weigh on what his thoughts were. One of the key slides that we use in our presentation is shown on the PowerPoint. And these are the different phases of a transformation effort that we see in organizations where early on people want to try and need to get the quick win with the focus on tools. They attempt to spread that through the organization, and a phenomenon occurs where there's pushback from the organization, and the existing systems and routines for people are going to push back on those approaches, and this continued focus looking for the next best tool or the next best framework leads to what we call the comfort of the comfort zone. Others might call it the flavor of the month approach. And then we talked about what we're noticing with some organizations that get beyond this. And that includes connecting to purpose, understanding what they're trying to do, the why, the importance of purpose, as well as understanding new sets of principles and understanding the connection between those new principles, the kind of behaviors that you would derive when you understood those principles, and then thinking about what are the systems you need to think about as far as driving those behaviors. Again, a very brief overview of the information. The initial response was people were receptive, wanted to learn more, and then we decided, well, let's have some follow-up conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've been talking about. Jim?
Thanks, Mike. So in the presentation, as Mike had noted, there's some things that align very well with my experiences, and I wanted to continue the conversation with Mike and Brian, see about what we could do to continue a conversation. And in my experience and journey, I do see a lot of this tool-focused effort from many organizations to send people off and get the tool training and the project, so they get this project to come back and implement, but there really isn't a good focus on the leadership part of it and bringing some mentoring, coaching paired up with that. So we all, most of us know that cultures equal behaviors, and we need to change those behaviors. And what Mike had, alluded to there, which is embedded into some of these different messages, is that management owns those systems that help drive the behaviors, and that together we have to make those systems appropriate for people to work within them using the tools along with the leadership partnership to help people embed those behaviors throughout. So my I just really appreciated the messages and the true upper level review of getting leadership involved and recognizing that the behaviors, the principles are what we start with. And then Mike had also gone into the key behavioral indicators, which typically we're working on, where we have key process indicators, KPIs in our scorecards and our measurements. But the key behavioral indicators are necessary to help us understand how our culture is growing, migrating, and getting to where we want it to be. And that was, a significant finding there, is to focus on those to help drive that cultural change. And I do appreciate that tool focus from past perspectives, that it works for maybe a time or two, but sustainably it really doesn't get to the heart of the issue where the culture needs to change. So those are some of my key takeaways and things that I wanted to dive further in, and we're looking for you for some feedback on how could we use a more collaborative and in-depth workshop to help us all learn more about implementing some things where we can sustain journeys like this.
That's great. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate those comments, and I think that's important background. Well, this is a chance for anyone on the call to describe a little bit about your experiences with perhaps your stumbling points or your key learnings, what's worked, what hasn't. These are some of the common questions you see on the screen that we discuss with people, but there may be others, and we would just like to get your current state view on perhaps where you see you're at in your own personal efforts or your organization's efforts around trying to have more of a culture of continuous improvement, and with the eye toward, or the ear toward as well, what sort of learning or sharing experience might be beneficial to help people understand what could be causing those stumbling blocks, and what are some strategies and approaches that might help you. So as Brian said, if you've got some input and observations here, just mention your name, where you're from, and share a little bit about what are some of your key pain points or areas of struggle.
Well, Mike, this is Christian Weidner, and I've been the director of Lean at Children's Hospitals now for about 11 years. My background before that was about 15 years in consulting on the manufacturing side, where, to your point, very heavy emphasis on the tools, or what I refer to as the methods, and working in a service industry where many people you have many autonomous workers going about their business day to day, and this idea of standard work is something that is new to them, and they don't really understand how to follow it and implement it and make sure that it's happening. My experience in that industry has been that, as I talk about Lean, I talk about the mindset, the management system, and the methods. And the management system is the piece that affects the culture, in my experience. You're looking for certain behaviors from the frontline staff, and especially when they're autonomous, that's really driven by the behaviors of your management. And trying to have a lean department or something that then goes and tries to affect culture is, in my opinion, kind of the wrong approach. You really need to work through the structure that's already in most organizations, meaning that the HR department needs to be on board and understand what does it mean to have a lean management system, or a continuous improvement management system. So working with the human resources departments, and you can certainly dovetail in with a lot of the other things they were doing. One of the struggles we had was, our HR department was, well, lean is really for, operations, and I'm not seeing where HR really needs to be involved. And besides, we have our own head, heart, and hands kind of thing that we're trying to implement. And one of the things that we struggled with was getting that organization to understand you can have some of the softer skills that you want to implement, and they dovetail nicely with some of the lean management practices. And if people are interested in hearing more about those practices, I'll expound on that. Otherwise, I don't want to, I guess, monopolize the conversation.
It's great input. I appreciate that, Christian. Thanks.
How about anybody else? Thank you, Christian. Quite group, Mike.
Yeah, it is. Things must be going just really well.
Yeah, right. No, they're all thinking.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You can also use the chat function if you want to type something in. And
Mike, are you okay if I just go ahead?
Sorry, Dan Mouse at General Mills on continuous improvement, internal control. I think for me, as I listen back to the webinar from February 2nd, or to that breakfast discussion, Mike, that you provided, how do you really go about helping your middle managers, implement the systems, right? How do we educate on systems? Because it's easy to educate on tools, right? We can find documentation anywhere, but how do you go about helping them understand how to implement management systems?
yeah, that's a good point, and something that we've devoted quite a bit of thought to. And later on, I'll share with you on our website where we've got some white papers and some initial thoughts on that, but it's something that we try to dig into. And there are methods to designing and making systems and have those systems be guided by certain principles. So it's something we've thought about and have some experience with trying to help people to do, to apply.
Hello, this is Ted Ellefson from...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ted. I'll follow you.
Okay. This is Ted Ellefson from Seagate Technology. I guess what we've found is that it can't be something, the initiatives or the tools or the systems can't be separate from the normal workload that we have. It has to be integrated fully into the normal work that we do, so that every project that we do is done using good methods and approaches and statistical tools and project management methodology. It can't be one set of projects that you do in your normal work and one set of Six Sigma projects or one set of Lean projects. It's helped us to integrate those things into the normal work processes that we do, so that it becomes embedded in the DNA of your department, the normal values, the normal workload, the normal roles and responsibilities of a director, a manager, and individual contributor. So I think that's the key thing that we've learned, is that you have to take it from an initiative into the normal way that you do business, I think.
And that's great. And as we proceed with this, part of what we're thinking about, and you'll have to tell us if this makes sense, if we were to host a workshop, it would certainly be more than just a few people sharing what they learned with others. It would be very beneficial to hear from others that have had struggles, but also some successes in going over these hurdles. So at least I was envisioning sort of a facilitated collaborative sort of a workshop as a follow-up, but we can get into that in the second part of the question. But if you've got some experience and some successes, it would be great to have that to be a part of any workshop we put together.
I'm glad I waited. My name is Tom Smirtnek, and I'm a guest of Kimberly Johnston's. I'm a local Twin Cities section VP and marketing chair for the ISA, the International Society of Automation. And I'm glad I had decided to attend today. This is very interesting. And what I wanted to say, and I'm glad I followed Ted there, because him being with Seagate and talking about projects, I wanted to highlight the struggles that both sales teams and engineering teams have in both an available set of tools or methodologies for their day-to-day activities that end up moving from key process indicators, because a lot of times engineers who are open and not assigned to a project where they're under the monitoring or guidance of a project manager, but it's just internal research and development, for example, usually unguided. And there's nothing for management to use to kind of herd the cats. And salespeople and engineers are notorious for being, difficult to control or guide. And so I wanted to give that feedback. I've been in industry for several decades, and that's always seems to be a struggle, both as a participant on a team as well as a supervisor or manager of a team. There wasn't anything until processes got to a catastrophic point when HR processes take over and seem to be more a means of justification to a particular termination end. And I never wanted to see any one of my salespeople or engineers get to that potential or that position. But that always seems to be the eventuality in those catastrophic points. And so I just wanted to add that. Thank you very much.
Those are great observations, and it makes me think about some of the things we often talk about is our relentless focus on the individual, even though we talk about processes, but also the need to understand what are the systems doing that are driving the behaviors, and that's an important part of the conversation we understand.
I'll add something on that. This is Christian again. We have in the hospital we have a lot of people working autonomously. Think about a nurse on a medical surgical unit where they've got patients to take care of, and you come with the idea that hey, we have some standard work in place around what you're doing, and the typical response is, well, everything that we do is so different. And if you just accept that without challenging that, you get up in the same place, where you're at, where you're saying, well, how do I have any standard work for these folks? And if you step back from it and say, well, wait, there are pieces that are the same. If you think about placing an IV, you do that all day long. Taping on a cannulus, there are better ways of doing it and poorer ways of doing it. You think about doing an admission, doing a discharge. As you go down the list, you find out, there are a lot of things that have aspects that, yeah, we do these 100 times a day. Shouldn't there be a standard way of doing them, and what is that way? And if you can start there, it starts the thinking about that, saying, yeah, I know this is different, this kid is a different age, this is a different situation, but I'm still placing an IV, or I'm still doing a discharge. People start to see that there are some commonalities. The trick is getting folks to, once you set some standards, how do you make sure that they're doing that? Because they're not, there's nobody watching them 100% of the time. And that's where you really get into the management behaviors. So having a way for managers to be present where the work is being done in an effective manner. There are some guidelines and tools for doing that, but you have to be willing to say, hey, managers, I need you now to be maybe managing different than you have, doing things different than you have in the past, and that's where you have to have the organization will that says, yes, we're going to now give our managers some training that says, hey, you need to be present in this way, and this is how we expect you to do it. Now you have some leeways. Everybody has personal styles, but there are still standards that we follow for management to follow through, so that you are present, so that you have an opportunity to observe some of the standards that are being done and give feedback on that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And this whole notion about what do we mean by standard work, who develops the standard work, How's that defined? And also standard work for people up and down the organization, if you think of an organization that way. And you can get into some interesting and important conversations about leader standard work, manager standard work, and certainly caregiver standard work, and anybody in any industry as far as what's the current best way we do anything. And those are important parts of the conversation that we need to have some discussion about. Well, I'm taking notes as we go and want to offer anyone any additional opportunity they would like to share. I'm also going to share the recording to this webinar, and if anybody wants to offer any thoughts offline, a chance to share what are some of the key focal points that they would like to have a facilitated discussion about should we put a workshop together. I'm going to pause a little bit and see if there's anybody else on the call that wants to weigh in on what they would like to see a part of that conversation. Envision that we put together an initial workshop. What would you hope that we would talk about?
I'll jump in. My name is Bill Farmer. Can you hear me okay? I'm driving and I'm not sure if
Sure, Bill. Keep your eyes on the road and we'll listen to you.
Yeah, I'll keep my eyes pointed at the road, my voice pointed at the mic here.
There you
go. I've been in industry in the Twin Cities, a 30-year career. The last 10 I've spent consulting, and I'm currently a consultant on product development operations. I want to leverage two of the points that were previously made. One is the herding of cats, the problem of managing engineers. And the second, the most recent comment, I heard it as, when we have standards, the problem becomes getting compliance. What facilitates the first, the herding of engineers, or if you will, the ability to delegate levels of autonomy to engineers and have them do the work that is critical to the operation. And also to get people to follow standards. I think a critical point is that people look on standards as straitjackets and handcuffs. And along with following standards, there needs to be responsibility put on all workers that this is our current standard. Our standard is our best knowledge, our best way of doing something. But part of your responsibility is trying to find a better standard. Opening up change of standards to individual workers allows them to do two things. First, it takes away the onus of being told how to do things, which is most people rebel against. And it also opens them up to proposing, experimenting with better ways of doing work, and thereby elevating the overall operation step by step, in, if you will, the manner that Lean is designed to promote change and improvement.
Yeah, those are great comments. I agree. Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome.
Okay, again, if you want to offer any comments offline, we'll have a way for you to do that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Would like to hear a bit that with this idea that perhaps a workshop, follow-up workshop, to unpackage some of the things that we talked about in February, as well as hitting upon any of the points that have been brought up in this webinar or that others want to at least have some discussion about. What sort of format or perhaps length of time from the customer standpoint would make sense? This could include anywhere from how much time could people carve out during the day for a workshop, and also what sort of format and content, process, engagement, things like that are people looking for in a meaningful sort of a workshop?
Michael, I have a question. That's Tom Smirnick again. What has been done in the past to both bring focus to a particular topic, as you are here, in targeting a potential workshop, as well as to open the gates as broadly as possible without diluting the message or being afraid of not of being exclusive and trying to be as inclusive as possible. Do you see where I'm going with this? Because I kind of broached the subject about engineers and salespeople, which appear in many industries in the Twin Cities area or the ASQC regional office and ISA regional section. But also we have, medical care deliverers like nurses that were also discussed. How do you want to, is there a way to categorize them genetically that clients and customers would really understand, or is it just by title that you want to target a particular audience?
Yeah, that's an important question. We've had conversations and educational programs that have had a variety of participants in a variety of industries, because we've noticed that these problems, although people may say we're different or there's something unique about us, many times it just boils down to people trying to work together and trying to understand how do they do that in the best way forward, to have respect for each other and to make sure they're all working toward a common goal so that they can find meaning in their work and that their organization is successful. And the initial conversation was, as I said before in February, short, but tried to be all-encompassing as far as some learnings that we've seen and some ways to think about those sorts of problems. And if you have a follow-up workshop that unpackages it just a little more, you may find out that there's interest in some people that perhaps want to talk more about the healthcare side, or they want to talk more about the engineering side. And that could be follow-up work that, Brian with his organization could help to channel and process. And Brian can say more about the format for the kinds of workshops that they've been hosting and how they've been thinking through this.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for the question. I think it's right on. I think typically what Penn has done in the past, and I think ASQ is in the same boat, Jim, you should register in. I mean, these types of conversations are very helpful to understand the need and the issues you're facing and shape the scope of the general topic. I agree with Mike that most everything I've heard here, and certainly in other workshops, I think a lot of these truths transcend industry and sector. Some don't. Some are very specific with certain industries and so forth. And we have customized either an entire workshop or examples and case studies within a workshop to, different types of industries. But Penn generally creates or helps create workshops that are broad-based and would apply to a variety of different types of organizations. And then people opt in to attend if they think that the topic itself would help. And we can structure a workshop in any way. You could have a mixed industry, mixed sector audience, but have different examples or have tables that sit together that are within the same organization or same industry to work through issues. But I do think a lot of the cross-sector, cross-industry learning that takes place is some of the value of hearing, different ideas, different perspectives from manufacturers versus healthcare versus whatever. So I think it's a great question. We could go either way. I think our sense today was just to try to get our arms around the pain points and the topics that would be of interest to this group. And I look at who is on call right now. There's 26 people, and I know many of the names. And you represent all the different industries, and we've heard from healthcare and manufacturing and some of the others. So what do some of the rest of you think?
I would offer up kind of three categories. I mean, as hopefully most of you know. You can, when you're trying to standardize things, you're always looking at what I call product families, and I can see probably three categories that could exist to lesser or more extent in almost any industry. So you have kind of what I would call process constrained workers, meaning the best example is somebody working on an assembly line, and if I say the standard work is to use this type of screw and to do these steps, you're constrained by the process itself. You don't have access to the other pieces of equipment or the other parts to put on, so you're constrained by the process yourself. And then you have the kind of the autonomous worker, and that can be an engineer doing some design work in a manufacturing environment, or a nurse doing work on the floor, or somebody in the ED doing work where they're working semi-autonomously, but they're doing things that still could be some standards involved. In the last one I would offer up, and I'm certainly not saying these are all inclusive, but three that spring to mind is somebody in the working in a creative process where I'm trying to create something new, and a lot of times people working in those types of environment really do push back on any kind of standard work without realizing, if I can make some of the stuff that I do all the time really standard, I don't have to spend any of my creative thought process on that, and I can really focus on the creative part of what I'm doing. So I would offer up at least those kind of three categories of workers, and the approach would be different for each one.
Yeah, that's a useful way to think about it.
I agree.
I think that's useful in the sense that it allows this body, I'll say, the group here trying to come up with a workshop to try and create an agenda or curriculum, if you will, an itinerary. But I think it could also be difficult in broadcasting who is the intended audience when you start trying to get people to come, because that you're speaking in a vernacular that is specific to ASQ and PEN about a particular topic. Mm-hmm. And most people aren't going to see themselves as process constrained, or they might see creative, but they might say, well, I'm not interested in going something that's going to be analytical. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking, I was trying to, as I was listening to others, I was trying to think of how to target audiences of people who use technology in their business, and not necessarily information technology, because that's the use of the term technology seems to bring immediately up information technology, but how to attract people who have a particular job technology that they use. And then maybe you could introduce somebody who is in a very constrained type of job. It has very defined boundaries and doesn't allow for very much creativity. So it's almost how you bound your description of the people. And it may help us open it up, and I'm certainly interested in attending, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. This has piqued my curiosity and interest. So in any way I can, this is Tom Smertnick again from ISA, any way I can contribute or be of service, I'm certainly happy to help.
Thanks, Tom. That's great. When we have offered this material and had a chance to talk with people about it, at least in a half-day format, we often notice that there's at least 4 groups of people that are interested in the message, or at least we talk about them in the course. But I would add a 5th group, and let me just describe where I think those groups are. First group is the leaders of an organization. When we think of leaders, think in terms of the CEO and who he or she reports to, that group that's determining the problems of the future and trying to guide the organization for the future. Second group is managers. And again, these are broad categories. An organization may have many sorts of divisions, but managers are the people that report to those folks, or they have some responsibility for some key processes. Could be engineers, could be people that are the middle managers of an organization that translate what senior leaders trying to do and translate that to the front line, and they're the ones that are overseeing the work systems and the work processes. And the third group is the frontline people. They're the ones that are the value creators for the customers, either internal or external customers, every day, doing their best to try to do those process steps, whether it's service or industry, to meet the needs of the customer. A fourth group is sort of an internal advisory role. Could be an internal lean resource team or lead person. Could also be the OD side of things, as Christian was pointing to earlier. There could be multiple groups in an organization that are trying to facilitate movement toward a culture of continuous improvement. So there's sort of like the internal expertise. And then I would say the 5th group is someone from the outside. who is invited in to provide guidance and perspective and a way to think about things to help guide leadership to move forward. And I would anticipate that whatever we could offer, at least in an initial offering, there might be something there for any of those 5 groups. I guess the question is who would free up time of their day to come and hear something that perhaps they've heard a little bit about, and they would want to know, so what's in it for me? And so I think the initial offering might be something that could be cast wide for any of those groups. And then as we proceed, certainly deciding, so what's next? Who would be interested in learning more? And this is important, how could we learn from them? Because my organization, we think of ourselves as pracademics, where we learn a lot from the people that are doing this every day. We try to share as best as we can what others are doing with the idea that everybody benefits from the dialogue.
This is Bill Farmer again. I've actually pulled over, so I don't have to worry about driving anymore.
Oh, good, Bill.
There was to me a common overlap among the 5 categories you mentioned, and I also think it's a category that operates at the the heart or the essence of lean, which is decision making. In my experience, when I work with companies, what I hear frequently is that people continue to delegate tasks instead of delegating real responsibilities. And when I challenge individuals on the practice, they say that their reports are not skilled, don't have the skill set that they can entrust them with responsibility, and so they end up delegating tasks. The Deming cycle, which of course is at the heart of lean, especially a version of it developed by a professor at the University of Michigan, Alan Ward, called Lambda, that he developed studying Toyota's product development system, really is, to me, it's put across as a tool, and I agree with everything everybody has said about tools are not the right place, or differently, it's a quagmire. You can get stuck in tools and never progress beyond them. But the skill development that comes through teaching of Lambda turns individuals into reliable, trustworthy decision makers, and I think that's something that would appeal to all 5 of the groups that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. That's very helpful. Any other thoughts on if we built something, would you come? I guess is the question. If we build it, would you come? And what would what kind of things are you looking for in that experience?
So this is Adam McNeely with Hormel Foods. A very good conversation, and definitely hits on areas that, in the manufacturing environment that we are definitely aware of and focused on. And certainly, we're getting more internal awareness around the pressures that these process improvements are putting on, our management system, and that maybe we need to be arming ourselves differently going forward with, how do we better connect with the systems and training for those individuals so that we can start to put some structure in place around what that should look like. And it also gives the, I would say, more tools end of it, or the people doing those projects, a place to then connect. Mm-hmm. So I see a lot of value from our end in just being able to better understand how do we put together a process around that ties out the purpose, principles, the systems that are going to drive the behaviors, and then really bring that together in what we need internally for training or involvement from HR to make that happen. So I think there's a lot of learnings that could come out of an event like that.
That's great. Thanks, Adam.
Tom, again, I think Adam's hit on that, the kind of the systolic nature of what you're saying for the next workshop and what comes after. And having been an engineer and designing products or designing processes, and then moving to sales and trying to transfer some of those disciplines, without it becoming formulaic and scripted, and leaving yourself some creativity as a salesperson to maneuver against the subtleties or the changes that your prospective customer is going to send you. There's always this dilemma: do you start at the top and work down? In your 5 groups, Michael, would be: do we start at the management and work down, or is it sometimes better to go to the ground floor, the users, the people who do the work every day, as you mentioned, and try and gain some feedback from them that would be beneficial to then talk to management in the subsequent workshop? So I would be more of an advocate for this latter scenario, where we talk to the users. We try and attract the people who are the doers, the ones who are conflicted, the ones who really are looking for some way to gain a better understanding, and then their own ability to improve their performance, their behaviors, their contributions to their employment, their job personally or to the corporation, if it's an ESOP, for example, and then gain whatever feedback we can from them, and then in a subsequent workshop address and solicit the managers, the strategists, the first line, middle executives, and maybe the consulting strategists.
Yeah.
How does that sound?
Well, I think it's a useful way to proceed, and my thoughts go to when Bill was mentioning Dr. Deming. I had the good fortune of working with him and learning from him the 9 years before he passed away, and one of the things that he always emphasized was, people will come to a course or learn about something, they'll say, "Darn, I wish my boss was here," or "I wish my boss's boss was here, because he or she's really the one that needs to get this and change." And Deming would, in conversations with me, he would say, everyone's on top of something. Everyone's in charge of something. And who's to say that the people that participate won't be the leaders for the future? And so he was always encouraging continual learning and improvement for everyone, regardless of where they were in the organization. And we often have conversations about, so you may not be at that pivot point in the organization where you would like to leverage what you're learning as far as a relationship between purpose, principle, systems, tools, but you're on top of something. You're in charge of some process. How can you best learn and apply wherever you're at, and then grow it organically from there? And I've always found that to be useful advice. Okay.
This is Joe Heiser with 3M Company, and what it feels like to me, good conversations by everyone. Thanks very much. We've heard some discussion about management systems and about the results and tools, and we seem to iterate through it. And so a long time ago, we used to talk more about guiding principles,
Mm-hmm.
and then we focused back on tools and systems, in which I think we're all collectively doing a bit better job than we were 7 years ago and 10 years ago. But it seems we've reiterated back, for us at least, into guiding principles, and so that we can help people make the right decisions, so that it's not so formulaic, those kinds of things. And so for me, what would be helpful is conversation about how to deploy guiding principles or strategies or thought, more than tools, more than systems, of course, more than a scorecard like results.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we institutionalize principles through our organization?
Yeah, those are
in an effective way.
Yeah, those are important points. And when we unpackage the model a little bit more, we do talk about, so what are these principles, at least the ones we can identify, and how do they guide the thinking? And then if you really understood them, what kind of behaviors would you start exhibiting? And then how can we use those to design systems? And we understand those as the key lever, rather than saying, so what are all the tools I could use? Because if you start with tools, it may or may not be the tool that's going to be helpful. Most tools are solutions to problems that people had in the past. They designed it because they understood things in a certain way, and they came up with an idea about what may or may not work, and then they developed it. And unfortunately, too often, we copy what people do. And I'll go back to my mentor, Dr. Deming, in the 1980 NBC white paper, where he said people want to go to Japan to copy, but they don't know what to copy. And he was referring to, you need to understand those principles then you'll know more about what does and doesn't work. So I think this is all very helpful for me as far as understanding where people may best benefit from some more discussion on these points. Any final thoughts on the idea of a workshop format, time, things like that? Okay. Captured some good thoughts here. What I would like to propose is I will send the link to the recording to everyone that is interested, as well as those that you may want to forward it on to others. No decisions yet have been made as far as, well, maybe we should hold a workshop and this is where it will be and this is how it'll work. But I would like to circle back with my colleagues, Brian and Jim, and get some ideas about what that may look like. And if anyone else would like to participate in that conversation, as far as the actual initial workshop idea, anybody would be welcome to participate in helping us plan it and pull it off. So any final thoughts, Jim or Brian?
No, I just have a quick comment. I see Mary Hassler.
Yeah, I see Mary's got a question. Mary apparently is muted, says you can't seem to hear me. She'd like a segment on systems design to apply new primary care model. And earlier on in the conversation we talked about, I think it was someone from General Mills talked about helping middle managers design systems. So we could certainly emphasize that.
Feedback. No, I don't have anything to add, Mike. I think this is a great conversation. I really appreciate you facilitating it and all of you dialing in. I know you're all busy people, and I'm excited to explore where this might go. I think this is a common challenge for all types of organizations. And Mike said, I think the next steps are for a small group of us, at least the 3 that he mentioned, and anybody else that wants in, to further kick this around and come back with some proposed ideas. So thank you for your time. Jim, anything to add?
Can I jump in one more time?
Yeah.
This is Bill Farmer again. First of all, I'll volunteer to participate in any go forward development that you do. Jim Nelson, his path and mine have crossed, so I think he'll be able to reach out and contact me. And I shamelessly like to put in a plug, only because it's relative to today's discussion. I'm giving a seminar at Augsburg College on the 24th of May. It's listed on Eventbrite under the title of 21st Century Product Development Operations. If you just Google that and Eventbrite, you'll see it, and there may be people listening for whom that would be of interest. And it also, for those of you putting together the workshop, it'll give you some idea of my thesis and my background and my qualifications to participate in the go forward. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that offer. Appreciate that.
I'll follow Bill since he and I both were invited by Kim Johnson today to attend today, and I'd like to. I'll contribute any way I can. I'll be of service, and I can reach out to you, Mike, through Kim.
Okay, great.
This is Jim Sid, just going to echo Brian's comments there and say thanks again for everybody and for Mike, obviously, to give us some details and respond to some questions there. So looking forward to, seeing what possibilities we have here and diving into this subject, because it sounds like there is some definite interest there.
Great. Well, I will organize a follow-up conversation, and at least by phone, to have a bit of planning time to talk about this. Circle back with the larger group and see, we will build something, we'll see who comes, and we'll all benefit from the learning. The last slide I'll show is if anybody does want to learn a little bit more about what is this stuff that Mike's talking about, where would I find out more? Well, you go to our website, you would find, click on some of those tabs up above, and you'll find something related to the materials. We've written a number of white papers, and it's a handy way to learn some of these things a little bit more detailed than a blog. And we continuously update those white papers because we're always learning something new. So just a way for learning. So on behalf of my colleagues, Jim and Brian, I appreciate everyone's time today. If you're traveling, travel safe. I was Bill that was traveling, but others may be doing it as well. So hope everyone has a great day and a chance to enjoy some good weather. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great weekend.
Great program. Yeah. Take care. Thanks.
Bye.